Hey guys, welcome back to Converse with CoCo. Thank you for joining me. Today I want to talk about perception versus perspective. So these are two words that I have really gotten to understand on my mental health journey, and I would like to explain my viewpoint of them now. So, perception, the Google definition of perception, one of them is a way of regarding, understanding, or interpreting something, or a mental impression. So I'm sure you've heard the phrase perception is reality. And that reigns true or used to reign true for me 100% because the way that I perceived myself, the world, situations that I was in, and others was the way that I thought it was. I did not know that there was any other alternative, and I did not regard anyone else's perception as I was extremely self-centered. Now, I used to think that I was not self-centered because I defined that as the same thing as conceited. And I've learned throughout my spiritual mental wellness journey that conceited and self-centered are by no means the same things. So just because I was obsessed with myself in a negative way and I put myself at the center of every situation, usually as the bad guy, I believed that I was not self-centered, but it was actually that's actually the way that it was. So I learned that, first of all, that I am a very self-centered person, and that doesn't have to be in a positive way. And in many different situations, that's not a positive way. So it's good to be aware of that so that I can figure out ways to cope with that and to get away from that type of thinking. So perception is reality, and my perception is clouded by my judgment of myself, others, and how I think they are judging me or how I think they think of me. So I have very low self-esteem, and it is something that I've been working on, but for most of my life I have had very low self-esteem and a very low self-image. And I create a version of you. When I say you, I'm speaking of any other person in a situation or even a conversation. So I create a version of you that thinks as harshly of me as I do. And I project my self-image onto my version of you. So right away, I'm making you the bad guy instead of me. Because in my mind, when I was very self-centered, especially in my active addiction, I believed that everybody thought I was the bad guy. And a lot of my energy went to disproving that and really just kind of making myself look like a fool because I didn't even know what other people were thinking of me. It was just my perceived version of that. So I really allowed my perception and my fear that others thought the worst of me because I thought the worst of me. I allowed that to taint my reality because I assumed that you were thinking of me what I knew about me. And a lot of the stuff that I knew about myself was just really things that what I like to call my lower power, the voice of my self-hatred and the influence that led me to make a lot of bad decisions. My lower power spoke to me in my own voice. So I thought that my perception of myself was reality, not just for me, but for everybody. So, I used to tell myself many things that were very negative and not true, like I was a piece of crap. I would never change. I did not have the capability to be a good person and never would be a good person, that I did not have the capability to make good decisions, that nobody believed in me, especially myself. So I allowed all of those things to taint my images of others. And so my perception was my reality that I was a terrible person and nobody thought anything different and nobody liked me and nobody wanted to be around me, when really I got to a point where I didn't want to be around myself, and I was afraid that everybody would see through my many masks and facades that I put up. So perception is reality, but perspective is key. And that is something that I really like to hold on to now that I've learned that. So perspective, the Google definition of that is a particular attitude toward or way of regarding something or a point of view. So what that tells me is I cannot change my understanding near as easily as I can change my viewpoint, right? Or I can change my attitude. So my attitude can affect my understanding. And I really love the illustration where there is a number written and one person is on one side of the number and they see a 6, and the other person is on the other side of the number and they see a 9, and both of them are angrily expressing their points of view, but neither of them decides to walk around and see the situation from the other one's point of view. So that's something that I can do is I can much more easily change my perspective than change my perception. And that will influence my perception, right? So, I can counter negativity with gratitude, with love, with acceptance, and with the opposite of negativity, which is positivity. So I have come across a phrase which I really like, and I try to remember to use it in many situations, and it's I call it API, assume positive intent. So even if someone has a negative intent or, negative motivation, I believe that it is better for me to assume that they have positive intent, because that does two things for me. One, that allows me to change my perspective and no longer have them as the bad guy in my story. Instead, it's me and that person against whatever problem or issue we're facing. It's not that person against me. And two, it allows me to more easily see their viewpoint, because if I believe that somebody has positive intent or good intentions, then I'm so much more likely to side with them and to voluntarily try to see things their way. So I can walk around that number, the situation, whatever it is, and I can try to see things from their point of view. I can change my perspective so that I can alter my perception, right? So, and the big word in that for me is attitude. Woo-wee. I can have a very negative attitude sometimes, mostly towards myself. And then I'll fall right back into the perspective or perception rather, that other people have a negative attitude towards me, when it could just be a reaction to mine. So my boss says all the time, you need to be proactive, not reactive, and if I'm always thinking that somebody has a negative attitude towards me, I'm absolutely going to be reactive and I'm going to be defensive. I used to be defensive in every situation because I assumed that people saw me as the villain, if you will, in their story, when I was really the villain in my own story. So assume positive intent. I love that little, to me, it's kind of a way of changing my perception, right? So, I want to bring up something that I have brought up before, and it's that I cannot think my way into right acting. I have to act my way into right thinking. So I hope that somebody got something out of that and that it was relatable and helpful. And if you would like to leave me a comment, let me know what you thought of today's video and what you'd like to hear me talk about next. Also, be sure to subscribe to Yellow Rocket Boys, who have made Converse with CoCo possible. And everyone have a great day. I'll see you next time.